Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm gonna show you what was the very last JRPG released for every single console. But I'm only going to focus on the North American release dates. I'll be covering PlayStation, Nintendo, Sega, and even Xbox. Alright, we have 24 games to cover, so let's begin! On the PlayStation 1, we've got Final Fantasy Origins, released on April 8, 2003. This is a full remake of the very first two Final Fantasy games in existence. It was also the very first time we ever got an official English release of the second game. Despite being released quite late in the PS1 lifespan, it did very well in sales. In my opinion, this and the PSP port are the best versions to play of these two classic RPGs. Moving on to the PlayStation 2, we've got Sakura Wars, released on March 30, 2010. This cross-genre game was actually released back in 2005, and the localization kept being delayed year after year. To make matters worse, the translation for both versions was ready since 2008. The whole story is easy to find, and it's even on Wikipedia. It explains why it took so long for this game to be published outside Japan. Thankfully, it was also released on the Wii that very same year, which means gamers had two options to play the very first Sakura Wars game ever to be localized out of the entire series. On the PlayStation 3, we've got Persona 5, released on April 2017. Some people seem to forget this popular game was also released on the PlayStation 3. And some people thought it was kinda pointless. I mean, the PS4 version sold way more than this one, but it still plays and looks amazing. Honestly, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with either version. Hard to believe it's the last JRPG to be released for the PS3, considering it's a game that was basically designed for a newer generation. Now the PlayStation 4 is still releasing games, so let's go portable now. On the PSP we've got Summon Night 5, released on December 2015. So here we got this hidden gem that took 2 years to be localized. Gaijin Works did the job, company founded by ex-employees of Working Designs, including the former director Victor Ireland. This is a tactical RPG with some visual novel elements. It's fun to play, but not exactly among the best games on the PSP. I just find it very curious that such an obscure game was released so late into the PSP lifespan. Last but not least, the PS Vita with Wizards of Brandel, released on December 2019. Gamco. They just had to be here, didn't they? Yeah man, Capcom kept releasing their generic styled RPGs on the PS Vita until the very end of its lifespan. It wasn't until Sony forced them to stop so they could continue on with other consoles. Now, is this game any good? I downloaded it just to play it out of curiosity and... not really. It isn't bad, but it's just one of those dozens of Capcom RPGs you probably shouldn't bother with. Okay, let's start off with the NES with Dragon Warrior 4, released on October 1992. 2 years after its original release in Japan, this revolutionary RPG was localized. It seems kind of ironic if we consider that Super Nintendo was already out. But it's Dragon Quest. Those games can be released years after a console's existence and still be successful. Now that I think about it, 1992 was a great year for role-playing games, mostly thanks to this game. Now on the Super Nintendo there's Harvest Moon, released in 1997, but I stopped considering the Harvest Moon games as RPGs because they're mostly 100% simulators. So the last JRPG released for the SNES is actually Terranigma on December 1996. But since this list is about the North American release dates, Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals takes the spot. I love this game, I think it's the best in the entire series. I've actually recommended it a bunch of times in my channel, I think it's criminally underrated, and it's vastly superior to the first Lufia in my opinion. Hard to believe one of the best JRPGs on the system was released when the Nintendo 64 was already out. And speaking about the 64, Paper Mario was released on February 2001. Another one that's hard to believe, eh? It marked the beginning of a new franchise. You know the story already, Nintendo and Squaresoft parted ways after the Final Fantasy VII controversy, so instead of creating Super Mario RPG 2, Nintendo's subsidiary, Intelligent Systems, was hired to develop a brand new game. Paper Mario was born, and its legacy still continues on nowadays. For the GameCube, there's Baten Kaitos Origins, released on September 2006. This game was originally going to be released for the Wii. However, Nintendo refused to accept that since the first game hadn't really been that successful. Numbers matter a hell of a lot to Nintendo, so it shouldn't be a surprise. And because by 2006 the Wii was already out, they thought it would be better to abandon this series on the GameCube for good. Origins is a prequel, obviously, and it's not as great as the first one, but it's still an amazing game, now totally forgotten. Damn it, Nintendo! Moving on to the Wii, we've got Pandora's Tower, released until April 2013. Operation Rainfall took place during the last years of the Wii's lifespan. Thanks to Exceed games, Pandora's Tower and The Last Story were localized. The former was released very late and it didn't sell as much as the other two RPGs from this operation. The release date itself overshadowed it, as well as its slightly outdated motion control mechanics. Either way, I still think it's quite the unique experience and a game everyone should play at least once, despite its, controversial nature. Yeah. Let's continue on with the Wii U. Revenant Saga was released on July 2017. Camco strikes again, but graciously with one of the best JRPGs they've published. I've actually covered this game a few times before because I really think it's pretty solid. Now, the Wii U wasn't its first home console. That would be the PS3 a few months ago. Yes, before Persona 5, so Revenant Saga was almost the last JRPG on that system as well. Anyway, it didn't get a physical release on either console, so people often overlook it. Yes, I do recommend this one of the very few Camco RPGs that are actually worth it. The Switch is still releasing games, so let's go portable now. First of all, the Game Boy with Pokemon Yellow on October 1999. Everyone was already into the Game Boy Color when Pokemon Yellow was released. It didn't affect its sales at all because the color was backwards compatible, which means most people probably play this version on it. I'm not a Pokemon fan here, but I'm surprised to say that these series have the Dragon Quest effect, meaning it doesn't matter when they release them, they'll probably be always successful. On the Game Boy Color we've got Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors, released on November 2002. Meet an extremely obscure game that no one paid attention to when it came out, perhaps because it was poorly advertised. This is a very short adventure, extremely linear and kinda generic. You'll play this one for its battle system since it's basically a fighting game played in turns. It's kinda convoluted and hard to get into, but fun nonetheless after understanding it. I do recommend it, but don't expect it to be as good as other Dragon Ball RPGs out there. Moving on to the Game Boy Advance with Final Fantasy VI Advance, released on February 2007. The second port this masterpiece received was on this classic portable system. It plays better than its PS1 counterpart, but it had two scenes involving Celise completely changed to favor modern censorship. Ugh. Anyway, a new translation more faithful to the original Japanese version was done. It has 2 bonus dungeons, 4 new espers, most glitches and bugs were fixed, etc. Is it the best version to play of this game? I'm not sure, since all 3 have a few problems here and there. All I can say is that it doesn't matter, since this is an excellent game on any console out there. Let's talk now about the Nintendo DS with Pokémon Black and White 2, released on October 2012. Nintendo and Game Freak decided to do a couple of sequels to the original games also on the DS. Yeah, both versions were released the exact same day. I'm not a Pokemon guy, so I can't tell you if they're good or bad, but I imagine that if you like Black and White 1, you'll probably like these 2 as well, right? Right? Last but not least, the 3DS with Persona Q2, released on June 2019. When the world thought that the Nintendo 3DS was dead, along came a bunch of releases in 2019. Some Yokai Watch games were released that year actually, but the last JRPG was Persona Q2, New Cinema Labyrinth, a sequel to the first one that came about a few years before. That one combined characters from Persona 3 and 4, this one includes the cast of Persona 5, which might be the reason why it took so long to develop. Yep, it's just as good as the first one with its Etrian Odyssey influence, so check it out if you're a Persona fan and also an Etrian Odyssey fan. The Master System, there's Golden Axe Warrior, released in 1991. This is a shameless Zelda clone, but with stronger RPG elements. Here you'll visit towns frequently and interact with NPCs quite often. It still has the same level of cryptiness as the first Zelda, but it's just as fun to play. There's a little controversy surrounding this game. You see, it was developed by Sega, sure, but it wasn't released in Japan. Why? I tried looking for more info on the internet, but I couldn't find any. But I'm pretty sure you will get to the bottom of this in no time. Moving on to the Sega Genesis with Light Crusader, released on May 1995. It's an isometric action RPG that focuses more on its gameplay than on its generic story. I actually consider this game for my list of RPGs with bad story but great gameplay. However, after playing it for several hours, I realized it's very cryptic and tedious. It's still great, don't take me wrong, and it's actually quite short, but I find it somewhat hard to praise nowadays. On the Sega CD, there's Lunar 2, Eternal Blue, released on September 1995. So the first version of this all-time classic was released until 1994. Thankfully, it took less than a year for working designs to localize this game. But sadly, the Sega CD was a complete failure in North America, so therefore, this little RPG failed as well. It wasn't until its PS1 port came about that Working Designs once again localized it and threw it into commercial success. On the Sega Saturn, there's Magic Knight Rayearth, released on November 1998. It's an action RPG based on the anime series, so you control the 3 heroines, each with different abilities, often required to solve certain puzzles. It plays in this top-down view perspective with chibi characters and small sprites. It's quite short, and honestly, it isn't that great, as I always felt it was kinda bare bones. I was a fan of the series when I was little, but I never became a true fan of it. Maybe that's why I don't think highly of it. I just wish it could have been developed for the PlayStation or any other console, as this Saturn exclusive is extremely pricey nowadays. Moving on to the Dreamcast with Phantasy Star Online version 2, released on September 2001. I've never played this version, so I can't really comment on it. All I know from what I read is that it's an updated version of the first one with new content and improved features. I did play the original, and I always thought its offline story mode paled in comparison to the Universe Saga. But it was meant to be an MMORPG more than anything, so it obviously succeeded more as such. Let's go portable now with the Game Gear Shining Force The Sword of Hajia, released on October 1994. This is actually the true Shining Force 3, but it's actually called Gaiden 2. Yes, the original Shining Force had two direct sequels called Gaiden 1 and 2. I have no idea why Sega decided to localize only the second one on the Game Gear. It's a great follow-up, but you do need to play the two previous games to understand it. Fortunately, it was later included with its prequel on a Sega CD collection the following year. At last we arrive at everyone's favorite, the Xbox, with Digimon World 4, released on June 2005. There's only 3 JRPGs released for the original Xbox, and Digimon World 4 was the last. It's an action RPG that was destroyed by critics, first for being action instead of turn-based, and second for having bad controls and boring gameplay. Funny thing is though that it could be played with up to 4 players simultaneously, but that wasn't enough to save it from thousands of thumbs down. And on the Xbox 360, there's Dark Souls 2's Color of the First Sin, released on April 2015. It's an enhanced version of the original Dark Souls 2, now with all the DLC included. No, I'm not cheating by including an updated version of the game. Let me tell you that the original was also the last JRPG released for the 360 a year before. Nothing came in between these two versions, so it's safe to say Color of the First Sin is the last, and it still sucks. So that's it for this video, guys. If you think I made a mistake or I got something wrong, just let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!